You're listening to the Worlding Podcast, where we explore the relationship of how we are both shaping and being shaped by our surroundings. The podcast traces interconnections by inviting each episode's guest to pass on the mic to someone who has influenced their world. And now, here's your host, dance artist Renae Shadler.
Hello friends. Today we complete our 11th string figure with my guest, Agnese Bordjukova, a dance artist based in Rigor in Latvia who was recommended by Daniel Hengst, who in the last episode asked whether we are willing to empathize with plants and grant them an autonomous intrinsic value. In this episode, we will continue that conversation, focusing on how we can develop our awareness of processes within the human body that can then extend outwards to also embrace our surroundings and the interconnection between bodies and worlds, between worlds and bodies. Thanks so much for coming onto the show, Agnese.
Hello, it's really a pleasure. And thank you to Daniel Hengst for the invitation.
To begin, can you share with myself and listeners your current surroundings and how they're shaping this conversation today?
Sure. I'm recording from my apartment in a small village next to a town called Bauska. It's a southern part of Latvia, approximately 60 kilometers from Riga, which is the capital. It is located, as I said already, in southern part, which is very close to Lithuania's border. So I'm very close to a different state already. It's my home village where I've been brought up, and at the moment there is a proper winter weather outside, quite cold, -9 degrees, and we've had a intense snowing. So now everything is kind of covered with snow and frozen, very white, but also gives it a bit like that shadow, like as well inside of a room, because there is no sun, just white snow, and it's very still. Still winter scene behind the window, and I have feeling that the air is not moving. Like literally it's frozen. And that still picture lets me notice the materiality of the snow and ice, color of it, feel the thickness of the air, and so on. And some things which I might not see if there were bigger movement going on, I think. Because big activity has calmed down, has been slowed down. So it's a possibility to notice and see small movement, small activities if they are happening there. As for example, smoke going out of a chimney.
I know a big influence on your dance work is authentic movement practice, which grew out of an inner-directed approach to movement developed by Mary Starks Whitehouse in the US, and then Janet Adler, who developed this approach into a practice involving a mover and a witness. And it's really interesting to hear you speak and also start to connect also to this authentic movement practice of observation.
I like to observe things. I think that's probably my nature. That's why authentic movement fits me quite well, because one of main tasks in role of a mover is to observe and to connect with the body. But what I find particularly nice in this practice is that there is that invitation to switch from control of a mind towards sensations of a body, and that's something what interests me a lot, and because I know that body has its own intelligence, and if I dial down like previous, like let's say these experiences which has been created by mind, I can connect to some different space which is new and more unknown for me. And yeah, I'm very attracted towards that unknown, let's say.
I had the pleasure of seeing 2 short dance videos you choreographed. Firstly, Hear Me, created in 2017 about the sound generated by the body, and The Loudest Place in the World, which you created in 2020 and also performed in, which was a work around the topic of freedom and how this is communicated only through the head and shoulders. So totally resonates with this idea of minor movements and really zooming into the detail. And both these films were shot in close-up, so only parts of the body were being shown in each frame. Can you share how you came to that decision of this very close, intimate frame for the audience and viewers?
Yeah. To begin with, maybe I would like to share which also like thinking and like about questions and like topics what I could talk about in this podcast about my practice. I somehow just came back actually to that time where that interest, probably let's say from an active movement to a very minor movement to a outer and visible like a part of a body, switched towards like internal space of a body. Years ago, I participated in a workshop of Portuguese choreographer Joan von Meyer Trindade, and she was in Riga, and she gave us a task to choose a picture of a sculpture and like embody that sculpture, like a shape of sculpture was the beginning, like of a task, and to make some short creative sketch. And I remember that in that moment, the idea came to me that I could make a movement without trying not to move so much. Like all my outer body would be actually that sculpture. I somehow embodied that heaviness of sculpture and the heaviness of bones and a heaviness of materiality of our own bodies as well. And I realized somehow that that internal processes of a body became very active. I started to feel big muscle contractions and that intensity of a breath, and how joints were holding me. So when I was kind of trying not to move, and there was some kind of resistance, which was quite big intensity, and I started to, not started, but just really, I found it fascinating in a way that that it's something which I haven't been like aware of or familiar with. Yeah, so I think then I started to research much more, like started to also in my choreographic work, started to find like or make a movement or choreography through these oppositions, kind of like starting point is non-motion, like or starting point is sleeping or stillness or not moving, and then similarly, like in this like winter scene outside, I started to notice much more internal activity, which is very intense. I would say so. That has been probably my inspiration to create work. And if we are coming back to these like two particular video works which you mentioned. The loudest place in the world. I was researching a topic of freedom in that work, and again, I came towards like for an expression of that through actually idea of restriction, and like how restrained actually our body is. I realized that it's not free at all because it carries so many experiences, informations, social norms, and so on, and like this idea of layers on what my body kind of carries. It was very, I think, good to use a video camera because it allows to zoom towards some smaller area of the body, and when I focus just to one thing, for example, to my palm, I observe it and I start to notice what kind of like natural movement maybe already happens there. So it depends on my like ability to sense as well, and some like on quietness of a mind, I would say as well. So it's not forcing me to do things, and so I let it to develop, and in that kind of way, like that small thing, which is kind of like and very low, which is located in very particular areas of the body. I find it's that it starts to live like their own life, and so somehow makes the wholeness of the body somehow more rich. From my perspective.
Yeah, definitely, with the separate parts being filmed so closely. Sometimes in watching the films, I also forgot that it was a whole body. Like definitely in Hear Me, there are some moments where the dancers are like really shaking their legs on the floor, and you're hearing the floor and the skin and the flesh come in contact. And it takes a moment to realize, okay, this is a leg connected to hips, connected to a torso, connected to a head. Like this idea of a personality of a human, or kind of the container that we perceive it in, starts to melt away. And you really focus in Hear Me, especially just on this vibration, this sound that is kind of permeating also the floor. So it is this dissolving in a way of this perceived border between bodies and worlds as two materialities come together to create something new.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. When I was making Hear Me, it was also kind of bigger research for me. I started with the video, and afterwards I made a performance as well, live performance. But I was researching a sound of a human's body, and not just a sound, but also a noise, which also was a nice concept. And the first phase, really, I went through that like testing. What actually can make a sound which other person could hear, like in a human's body. And very much it's about like, okay, I can hear like how my scapula cracks and how my heartbeat sometimes going, and I can sense that muscles or some kind of nerves of my body are tickling. However, it's not somehow very visible to other people. And when I wanted to make like this material perceived, like possible to see and also hear for spectators, I was searching like for those ways, how to amplify it in a way, and somehow how to make it hearable, actually. And yeah, so so there are approximately, I found at least 3 levels, like how that sound is happening in a body, like and can be hearable. One which is probably not hearable by ears is all the internal sounds and the motions of organs and the blood system and so on. However, I know that John Cage has told that he has heard kind of like there is a chance for humans to hear their own like blood circulation, but then they need to be in very quiet room and their set of mind also should be kind of very, very calm. And then more hearable and more on the surface thing is like cracks and different kind of like movements, no, but the sounds of joints, which and then like body part connects to some kind of a surface that makes a sound, and that's probably something what I used the most as so because that creates that sound. And of course also voice, like a voice is also very rich source of how to say, transportation, or kind of it transports, I think, out a lot of what person carries inside, I think, especially if we use that non-verbal voice, like that kind of, which I think in linguistics it's called bubbling. Yeah, so these like sounds which are pre-language phase, which every person, every small baby, toddler is doing and using, and which we kind of because of education and learning a language actually use more less and less until we don't use them at all. It's actually great tool to release stress, some tensions, and to bring out also something which is suppressed in a way, I think, in the body. Yeah, it's about this carrying and then bringing it out. And I think through that voice, abstract sounds of a voice, it's very much happening.
It's also incredibly playful, hear me, because there was really this open exploration of how movement can sound, how materiality of things and bodies come together. And there's a very touching part in the film where a performer comes to the camera and you get a close-up on the mouth in this position, almost like a kiss, and this very strange bubbling comes out, as you refer to it. And it is very much, for me, this very primal exploration of just exploring the matter as it is and exploring what's possible. And I think it's a very rich invitation in that way. Like, can listeners now, perhaps wherever you are, just experiment with parts of the body coming together, or if there's a surface near you, tap it and really listen into what that sounds like, because I don't think we really have that invitation so often in our everyday life.
Yeah, I agree. And I've been living in Soviet times as well. And all that big heritage of restrictions, I think I carry partly that in my body as well. So that's why I think also that like revelation in a way that, I can be spontaneous and really through that body and through that sound, which doesn't have to be certain, which doesn't have to explain anything. I can just express myself and let things out is, very, very freeing, as you said.
I'm interested also in your focus on the minor movements and how that is extending outwards into a welding practice, because I really think by relating to the small movements within the body, there becomes this moment where it does provide a greater empathy or point of relation with our surroundings, like thinking about the loudest place in the world where the camera is constantly on the shoulders and the neck, and there are movements that you're performing. It's a solo performance for those that haven't had the opportunity to see it. And Agnese is moving also her neck very slightly, extending it forwards in a moment, and you notice the veins in the neck, like how they are contorting and really allowing this movement to take place. And it connected very nicely to last episode when Daniel was talking about how plants that we cohabit with, so inviting listeners to think of a plant that perhaps is in the house or perhaps they walk past regularly, and how that plant grows. So I was looking at a bonsai which has lots of branches interconnected, and thinking about how that also relates to how I extend my head forward, for example. And I think this as a worlding practice also allows this dissolving of these perceived borders. And then once we start to understand that there is a relation in the way we grow, in the way we function, it is possible to empathize without placing the position of the human on top of the position of the other living matter or of the floor. Obviously, it thinks differently to us and it functions differently, but there is a similarity in which we can build a relation. There's a point of contact or a point of connection that then can, lead to something else, perhaps.
Mm-hmm. It can. I think that knowledge also has come to me through getting to know and getting more and more contact in my body, and in that part which kind of comes more from a body, not so much from a mind or thinking. As we already mentioned, materiality, like internal impulses of a movement, and it somehow brings, I think, us in a different kind of awareness about like processes which are going on in my own body, for example. But then it also brings me into some, allows me to perceive more subtle things and perceive also time a little bit differently. And I think that's quite crucial combination for people generally to be able to notice also things outside and outside of ourselves. I remember it was as well quite a long time ago, but I was in a meditation retreat, and after 8 days of practice, I was walking in a field, and I remember I was standing on grass, and I took my feet away from grass, and I saw that like it has been put down, but then I just noticed how it's like coming back and straightens back up, and it was so strong experience. And I thought, oh, how can I haven't noticed that before? And then I realized that there is some kind of like more like bigger clarity like in my mind, maybe, which, for example, also authentic movement practice brings in, because there is that like aim to connect or to search some kind of a clear movement, clear sensation, and because of that clarity, I could notice like things outside of me much more. And then that realization comes, I think, that just our bodies are just like a part of a world, which is, of course, and we are connected in very different way. And And movement practice, really, I learn through that, like how that kind of subtle movement or subtle collapse, for example, of cells, bones, joints. When, for example, I go from vertical to a floor, that it's very similar to maybe avalanche in a slower version of that. And so in that kind of way, I'm totally sure that we are connected, and that helps me to understand the plant and the grass and maybe another live organisms and also another human beings. But in that primal level, in that like life level.
Is there a way, Agnese, that myself and listeners and perhaps people that don't come from a movement background could experience some of the ideas that we're talking about today? I like to invite guests to propose a physical task or invitation that we can really embody and feel into your research.
Yes, I would like to propose actually something very simple, and I often like to work with a timer and frame some certain amount of time, which gives me a beginning and a kind of ending for tasks. So, but I also have that freedom to just to explore and to connect with my sensations and whatever comes. More freely, and but today, like here, we are going to do it like that. That you find a position where you want to be in. It can be either sitting or standing. For this time, I would propose, and then you close your eyes, so you can connect with your body easier. And after there will be like the time frame around 3 minutes for this task at the moment, and after 3 minutes you will hear some kind of sound which tells you that it has finished. So I hope you have chosen a position and easily close your eyes. And the first thing which you do is you draw your attention, you bring your attention towards how your body connects to a surface you are connected with. If you are standing, you feel the area underneath your feet. If you are sitting, connect. Bring your attention towards those points where you feel your body touches surface. And let your body to open up towards the surface. And then you feel where is your breath. And bring your attention towards your breath. And don't do anything special, just observe. Allow yourself to connect with your internal space through your breath, through your breathing. And from now on, I'm not going to tell a lot, but I will just allow you to feel whatever sensations you can feel in your body. It's like you observe yourself from inside and just allow yourself noticing everything what you can sense, what you can feel. Okay, so 3 minutes has passed now, and you can gradually, bring your attention towards outer space again. When you feel ready, you can open your eyes and allow yourself a little bit, maybe just to realize, what did you feel? What did you experience just now? But I also sometimes like, when it is a task, I like people to tell, and for example, to name specifically 3 things what they could feel or sense. And how about you, Renae? Can you maybe share with us 3 things which you could feel in this time frame?
Yeah, definitely. I had a really nice, cozy sensation around my neck. I'm wearing a scarf, which is very dear to me, and it's cashmere, so very soft fabric. And so that was very much a kind of connection from the inside to the outside, the connection of the cashmere material on my skin, and then imagining kind of the scarf as an extension of the skin, or the skin as an extension of the scarf. And then I actually had my elbows on my desk. I'm standing at my desk, and So my contact was through my elbows to the desk and through my feet to the floor. So when you were talking about melting, that felt very clear to me. These 4 points of, water came to mind with the idea of melt, just pouring into the wooden desk and the parquet on the floor. And then a third sensation. I think the idea of the still winter from the beginning of our conversation was still very present. So I kind of connected with that, I think, internally, there being some stillness and silence for people listening to this podcast. Perhaps for you, it's a weekday, or you're traveling, or you're cooking, or you're spending time with your children. But for us right now, it's a Sunday midday in winter, in December. And somehow the time and the place really resonated inside in a very still way.
Sounds great. Thank you. It's very nice to hear.
And how about you, Agnese? Do you have 3 things you realized or felt?
Yeah, I felt a tingling, let's say, feeling, somehow pulsating feeling more in the back of my head. I heard, or kind of it felt, that my heartbeat today is somehow lower in the stomach. I somehow felt like the resonance of that in my stomach today, not in the chest so much. And also I felt like dryness of lips, of the skin of lips, which feels somehow very, very dry at the moment.
Perhaps listeners can write them down or share your 3 sensations with a friend or someone nearby. Because it's really nice also, I think, this aspect of sharing afterwards, because one thing is the practice of sensing and one thing is the practice of articulating. Again, we're bringing sensation and language closer together.
Thanks for inviting and for this opportunity to share and tell about my practices and way how I see or sense maybe a world.
And thank you so much, Agnese, for being our 33rd Worlding podcast guest. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Amazing. You have had 33 guests. It's a very, I think, nice journey.
Yes, it's been an amazing journey, and I feel very humbled to have had the opportunity to connect with 33 artists and thinkers from all different disciplines, whether they be dance artists or visual artists or sound artists, and also be guided by them. So for each string figure, I curate the first guest, who is always a Berlin-based artist, and then they curate the second, and the second curates the third. So often I would find myself in a location I'd never been to. So for example, Virginia in the US, where we were discussing the African diaspora and reparations, to Belgium, connecting with graphic designers and sharing ideas around queer fantasies. So I think that was a really interesting part of the podcast as well, this idea of not knowing, of following worlds and allowing worlds to world, So it was also a little bit more on a meta level, a way of like allowing stories to unravel and allowing ourselves to be surprised and not having this hold on control or holding a kind of central position in that. So it was very liberating, and I'm a little bit sad that now we come to the end of this project after 2 years, so from 2020 to 2022. And I would like to say a big thank you to Camillo Pampilonio I do hope I pronounced your second name correctly. Camilla's been doing the sound editing for these episodes, and to Anna Velik, who is the intro and outro voice, and of course to Distanzen of the Dachverband Tanz Deutschland and the Neustadt Kultur funding program, who've been very generously supporting these episodes, and Anna will give you the full German credit at the end. So yeah, a really big thank you to listeners, and I hope you can continue to engage in the archive, and perhaps the Wording Podcast will come back, perhaps not. I'll keep you in the loop, and I wish you a wonderful day, whatever day you're listening to this. And for Agnese, I wish you a wonderful Sunday afternoon, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I wish you also very, very nice winter time and December.
Thank you for listening to the Wording Podcast. Gefördert durch die Beauftragte der Bundesregierung für Kultur und Medien im Programm Neustadt Kultur. Hilfsprogramm des Tanzen des Dachverband Tanz Deutschland.